We all know clinical trials are how we get new medicines. They're absolutely crucial. But what if I told you they're being slowed down by a hidden problem? A problem that has everything to do with data overload. So let's pull back the curtain and find out what's really going on behind the scenes of modern medical research.
Okay, so first things first, we need to understand just how big this problem is. And trust me, this isn't about a few extra forms. We are talking about a massive, and I mean massive, explosion of data.
All right, I want you to take a guess. Just one single, average late-stage clinical trial. How many individual pieces of data do you think it collects? The answer is just, wow, 5.9 million. And let's be super clear here. That's not for a whole program of research. That's for one single trial.
And what's really wild is that this number isn't just big, it's growing at a crazy rate. I mean, look at this. Back in 2012, a trial like this collected just under 1 million data points. Fast forward to 2020, and it's over 3.5 million. Now, we're talking almost 6 million. That's a six-fold jump in a little over a decade. It's just unsustainable.
So, this huge explosion of data brings up a really important question, maybe the most important question. We're gathering all this information, but do we actually need all of it? Is it all helping us figure out if a new medicine works, or is a lot of it just noise?
Well, that's exactly what a group of researchers wanted to figure out. The Tufts Center for the Study of Drug Development got together with 15 big pharma companies, and they decided to do some real detective work. They basically cracked open the instruction manual for a clinical trial, it's called the protocol, to get to the bottom of it.
And this is how they did it. Pretty clever, actually. They took every single thing done in a trial and put it into one of 3 categories. First, you've got core procedures. These are the absolute must-haves, the stuff you need to prove the drug actually works. Then you have standard, routine safety checks. And then you have non-core. This is interesting data, sure, maybe for some future project, but it's not really needed to answer the main question of this specific trial.
But here's where it gets really interesting. They didn't stop there. They found this whole other hidden category of data, something they called non-essential. Now, this is a brand new idea, and it's a total game changer. It's when you take a procedure that is important, but you just do it way more times than you actually need to.
Okay, let's break this down because it's important. Think of it like this. Essential is checking a patient's blood pressure once a week, because that's what the science says you need. Non-essential is when the people writing the plan decide, hey, just to be safe, let's check it every single day. See the difference? It's not that the data is bad, it's just extra, more than what's scientifically required.
Right, so now that we have these categories, non-core and non-essential, what happens when you actually add up all the data that falls into them? This is the big reveal of the whole study. And the results are, well, they're pretty shocking. Look at this. In a typical late-stage trial, only about 2/3 of the data being collected is actually essential. The other third, 32.5%, is either for future maybe research or from doing things too many times. Almost 1/3 of all the data collected is basically just nice to have.
And it gets worse. If you look at trials that aren't for cancer research, that number jumps to nearly 40%. Just let that sink in for a second. In some of our biggest, most expensive medical studies, 2 out of every 5 pieces of information we gather from a patient isn't strictly necessary to prove the drug works.
So this isn't just about numbers on a chart or some technical problem for data scientists. This protocol bloat, as they call it, has a massive real-world cost. And that cost is paid by the people who are at the very heart of this work, the patients and the doctors and nurses running the trials. So where's all this extra stuff coming from? Well, the study found the biggest culprits. Over half the data from questionnaires, not essential. 41% from patient diaries, same thing. These are the things that ask the most of patients, filling out forms, tracking symptoms every day. And so much of that effort is going towards collecting this nice-to-have data.
It all comes down to this one incredible number. The researchers figured out that 30% of the entire burden on both patients and the clinic staff comes from doing these extra procedures. We're talking about extra trips to the clinic, extra forms, extra time. Nearly 1/3 of all that effort, all that stress, is for data that isn't even core to what the study is trying to prove.
And the consequences of this are huge. For patients, it's more time away from their lives. For the clinic staff, it's a recipe for burnout and even mistakes. And for society as a whole, it just means that developing new medicines is slower and more expensive than it has to be. That means new cures take longer to get to the people who need them.
Okay, so it's easy to get down about all this, but here's the good news. The whole point of this study wasn't just to say, hey, there's a problem. It was to light a path forward.
It shows us how we can build smarter, leaner, and frankly more humane clinical trials.
And the main takeaway here is really important. It's not about just cutting stuff out for the sake of it. Nobody's saying we should stop being curious or stop collecting valuable data. The goal is to be more thoughtful. It's about asking, for every single data point, is the value of this information worth the burden it places on people?
So how do we do that? The paper gives a really simple, powerful framework. For every single task in a trial, teams need to ask 3 questions. Number 1, why are we doing this? What question does it answer? Number 2, why so often? Is this frequency really necessary? And number 3, the big one, have we actually weighed our scientific goals against the real human cost? And I think this quote from the authors themselves just says it all perfectly. The intent is not to eliminate all non-core or non-essential, but to ensure their inclusion is carefully considered and deliberate. It's not about banning anything. It's about making every single piece of data justify its own existence.
So, this really leaves us with one big question to think about. If we focus on what truly matters, if we respect the incredible contribution of patients and researchers, we don't just make trials less burdensome. We make them smarter. We make them faster. So you have to wonder, how much faster could we develop new cures if every single piece of data we collected truly mattered?